Hi, and welcome to the Healthcare Facilities Network. I am your host, Peter Martin, president of Goslin Martin Associates. As always, I thank you for clicking on this video. Today, you have clicked on episode 2 of Hospital Compliance 101. Our roundtable of a mighty 3 returns, and we continue our discussion about compliance in healthcare. We talk a little bit about how compliance has changed over the years. We talk a little bit about documentation. And Craig Stuckless, one of my guests, will also introduce the concept of intense fellowship. Stay tuned, if only for that, about intense fellowship. We get to it at about the 5.5-minute mark. I loved the term, and Craig, thank you for bringing it up. So I do hope you enjoy this conversation. If you missed episode 1 of Hospital Compliance 101, there will be a link, or there is a link at the end of this video. So you can click on episode 1 and hear the first part of the discussion. One of the items the gentleman brought up was relative to documentation. And as you may know, within the Healthcare Facilities Network, we will create mastermind groups. And I was thinking, and let me know if you're interested in this, it might not be a bad idea to create a mastermind group relative to documentation and the surveying process. So if you are interested in that, let me know. That'll be coming down the road in a bit. So relative to documentation and ways to do documentation during the survey process. And of course, for that particular episode, you guys are the experts, not I. So with that, please stay tuned for episode 2. And if you like the term intense fellowship, let me know. We're going to jump right into the conversation now with a question. And here you go. You guys have been in the field for a while. How has compliance changed over the years? Has it changed? And if it's changed, how has it changed, and how has it made you change your approach? Is that a fair question? Has it changed? How has it changed? And how have you had to change with it? Michael, you raised your hand first.
Yeah. No, I was pointing.
Sorry, Craig, you're out. You're automatically 3, so you can't complain. We can't see you. But so, Michael, your hand was up. Craig, if yours was, I missed it. Sorry.
Just thinking back, compliance used to be a very punitive experience. You know, when the state would come in and they had these old scary guys. You know, as a young facility manager 20 years ago, you know, they come in from the state and they're threatening to shut you down, and they just berated you in front of you know, your peers and your bosses, and made you look like a real fool.
Yeah.
And it's morphed into more of an educational experience, in my opinion. And me as a life safety surveyor, I survey that way as well. But even our folks, most of them in Wisconsin, there's still one creep out there. I can't mention his name, but
yeah. If you had, I would have deleted it, so I don't want to get you in trouble.
But anyway, it's just become more of an educational experience. From a surveyor side, when you see the right people trying to do the right things for their facilities and their patients, you know, you're just trying to help them.
Yep.
And I feel that even from my last Joint Commission survey last fall. The Joint Commission used to be a very punitive organization, and they've turned the corner. I mean, they're still going to cite you for violations, but it's all meant to make us better. And, you know, so next time we see them, we won't have those problems.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I echo that. I think it used to be a punitive organization, and there used to be fear associated with that. You know, when a survey would come in, and I mean, it was almost like you were just sitting there waiting for the principal to. Yeah. I'm gonna date myself here now. When he took out the strap and you got the whip.
Yeah. Strap, ruler. I went to Catholic school, so they had the rulers.
You got the ruler. There you go.
The ruler.
So I think it's changed. It's become more teaching and more educational. You know, along with, yes, they're still checking that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, but I don't think it's become as punitive as it once was. You know, they're not just saying, okay, you did this wrong. Now they're showing you other areas that, or what other people are doing to improve this. And, you know, how can we help you with that? There's more resources out there to help you. And, you know, when I first started my Joint Commission surveying part of it, you know, I used to just sit there and take what this person was saying and take that as law. And I think now I've become more questionable because I don't have that fear anymore. And I'm a little more educated as well. So that's part of it. But, you know, I don't mind challenging a surveyor because, you know, the code is written and everybody has a different interpretation of that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're right or you're right. It's the interpretation of that. And the ultimate goal is to, let's just make sure we're doing what's right for the patients and our staff. And so I've gotten over this, you know, I'm just going to take what they say and that's law and we'll change and do this. Because if that happens, the next guy comes in, is probably not going to like the way that last guy did it. And so you've changed all your policies or your, you know, your documentation to accommodate the last guy. This guy coming in is totally different. So I think we've got to come to a more amenable way of doing things and not be afraid to challenge what you're being told.
Craig, how do you balance that when you're questioning, you know, when you're questioning somebody, what, and you've done it for a while, so I'm sure you kind of innately know, but how do you balance going overboard versus, you know, getting your point across versus doing what they're telling you? How do you balance?
Good question. I mean, you can only go so far. And once you recognize that you're not going to change that person, there are other, so if the surveyor is there and you were into a intense fellowship, how's that? Just what's going on.
Can you define that intense fellowship?
You're giving your interpretation of what it says, and he's saying, no, you're wrong, or no, that's not how I see it.
Excellent.
Okay, they're the surveyor, so just take that, you know, just, okay, I agree to disagree, we'll accept the citation, whatever it is that comes out. But there are other challenging, so you can challenge that citation after once that person is gone and it goes to the head office, and then they go to a board and it assesses the situation. So there are different avenues rather than, you know, getting in your face, pointing fingers, or calling the guy out to the back parking lot and having it out.
I would say also to just, you know, ask it back as a question of clarification, ask for a point of clarification instead of being confrontational with the surveyor. In April, I was on a survey and this hospital had hired a life safety engineer to follow along and challenge everything I said.
Wow. For
3 days. That didn't go well, you know, because then I just started writing everything I saw.
Right. So that was the sole purpose of that person to follow you.
To challenge everything I wanted to say. And so by the end of the survey, I was calling him Mr. Wizard. So I'd find something like, hey, what do you think about that, Mr. Wizard?
Wow. I was going to ask you that because you are as the ACHC surveyor, I was going to say, do you have an example of somebody going too far, of not having that balance, and what was that situation?
That's it. And then also another recent survey, I had noted something of a penetration into an egress passageway, and the guy challenged me in the proper way. And I said, you know what, over my lunch break, let me look into that. And it ended up, he was right. Yeah. So you know, the surveyors are not, we can't know all 600 NFPA codes top to bottom.
Right.
So,
and see, that's what I was getting at. They do not know it all, and they may be wrong. And it's the approach of how you question them and their interpretation of it, and try not to get confrontational of it. Just also don't just take what they tell you as law. I mean, you're a smart individual, or you wouldn't be in your position. You know, so question and do it from an educational. I want to know. Can you tell me why? You're seeing it this way. So great, Michael. That was good.
How do you guys stay educated? relative to compliance and all the, notice how I added the caveat that not how do you stay educated in general, how do you stay educated in compliance? But I mean, it's ever changing, right? You guys have just alluded to it. So how do you try to keep up to date to the best that you can with everything else going on? Patrick, let's start with you.
Well, obviously attending, conferences for NFPA, ACHC. I try to make sure I go to those every year. I'm a certified safety professional, so CSP. So I have to have 250 hours of training every 5 years. So 50 hours a year minimum. So 2 conferences covers typically my CEU's continuing education use for that. But for healthcare, that is constantly changing. The annual conferences for NFPA, actually get involved with your local chapters too. I mean, I'm not trying to be a spokesperson for ACHC, but we just had our GAFM, and Craig, you may have been down there in Savannah for Georgia Healthcare.
GAFM's the Georgia Healthcare Engineers, correct?
Yeah. And so that's once a year in Savannah. That brings together all your local healthcare facilities and engineering and compliance staff, and that's a good time to learn locally what's going on. The state fire marshal's there. They bring somebody from joint commission from DNB, and so consultants are there. But for education wise, I mean, you have to stay involved. You can't go years without going to a conference or talking to people or staying networking and think that you still are gonna know what's required. It's just
right. Yeah, I can't do it.
no. I wanted to actually, well, if you'll allow me just a second to go back and answer that how compliance has changed over the years, for the surveyors real quick. Michael Craig jumped in. I just wanted to add 2 cents real fast. I'm the younger one of the group, and I'm not saying you guys are old by any means.
I'm offended.
No. But when you challenge a surveyor and you politely debate a surveyor, it is perceived a little differently. You have been in it for 20 plus years, whereas me being in it for 10 years ago without a beard, I mean, I look like I just got out of high school, and so I had to be really careful how I talk to surveyors and how I, because go on back up.
Keep going.
Yeah, and there it is. So I never tried to challenge one like in front of a big group. If I knew there was a surveyor that was feeling intimidated at all, like if I could see that gear was switched, I would take a step back as the total student from there on out. And we like you, Craig, honestly, from day one, since I came in the door in healthcare, because I came from the fire marshal's office, I never had a second thought to, hey, if you're wrong, you're wrong. This is not right. We need to talk about this, blah, blah, blah. So I pushed back during our very first survey that I was here. And so that, was right. It was cameras in the stairwells. Just to kind of throw it out there. It was cameras in the stairwells, 2015. We were still on the 2000 edition of Life Safety Code, but in the 6th edition and on, it had been adopted, right? And we were using waivers from the 12. And so anyway, long story short, for me, I've always tried to be very polite. And if I was wrong, I was wrong. But, if I was right, I kind of dug my heels in and didn't do it in front of a group, but went to my administration and said, hey, look, you can't take these, certain things out of these areas. It's for security purposes and yada, yada. So, but yeah, the physical environment too. I mean, it's a lot more focused than the document review. They give them 90 minutes now to get through 30 binders. That's impossible. I mean, Michael, I don't know how you guys, especially Craig, when you guys do surveys, I don't know how y'all get through.
Yeah, I'm not locked to the Joint Commission 90-minute document review. It's usually half a day if they're well put together. sometimes takes longer. But I do a pretty intense document review.
That's fantastic. I think people should, because from consultants, I mean, if your books are well put together, a lot of times surveyors, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, they'll just pass through a few reports, and then they'll start talking a lot of times about something else. But if that's your job, like your coordinator, Michael's coordinator, and like my manager and analyst, that's what they do. That's their moment to shine. That's their moment to get through their, what they're doing day in and day out. And if it's just passed over.
Not to mention I paid $100,000 for that damper inspection. I want you to look at it. This binder was very expensive.
So let me ask
That brings up can I interject just a second here, Peter?
Sure.
I think that brings up something that I would love. I wish the Joint Commission or CMS would standardize the documents that they want presented. I mean, I've been to numerous hospitals and each one has a different form for doing this, for doing that, generator testing, exit light inventory, all this. I think part of what we as facility managers or people that are involved in the standards and compliance should be prompting these organizations to do is standardize the document you want. So with it, we're not interpreting different ways to do or record things. I mean, if the Joint Commission comes out and says they want a generator testing form completed, then send the form. Develop the form that you want to see, and then everybody's standardized. So we're not wasting time looking for whether you've recorded your 10-minute cool down period or whether you've done this or that. And I think that's where we fail right now as or where Joint Commission and CMS have failed is it's still open to interpretation, or you present what you think and then we'll critique it. So instead of doing that and making it more make it more educational, here is what we want you to use as a standard throughout every hospital, and therefore there's no this person's doing this person's doing either this facility's doing this facility's doing that. I wish we could get a form that we could sit down and talk about standardization of the documents for everybody. That's one thing I would love to see.
So let me I'm going to note that. I will write that down, but I do want to ask one final question in our remaining time. I know we have a hard deadline coming up, and this may be an unfair question, but you guys talking made me think about it, so it's your fault, not mine. But in 30 seconds to 1 minute, if you can you give me, like, for somebody who's your paths into what you're doing are really varied and they're really interesting, to this point in time. Can you give me, for people who maybe they're thinking about a career in compliance or saying, hey, this is interesting, could you give me a practical example of compliance in action to the benefit of the patient? Does that make sense? An example of compliance.
Sure.
That's a benefit to a real world thing, a real world example you can point to. And I know it doesn't come all wrapped up and says, this is compliance, this is what worked, but if that question makes sense, can you answer it? Patrick, you're shaking your head. So I'll go to you first, because maybe you've got something on top.
All right, you said 30 seconds to a minute, so I'm gonna try to be quick. So we do a fire warden program in the hospital. Drills are required to be unannounced, an hour apart, quarterly on each shift, yada yada. So we do a fire warden program. We recruit 3 to 5 fire wardens that started this 8 years ago. 3 to 5 fire wardens per smoke compartment, per floor, per shift. So we have a couple thousand now in each hospital. Fantastic. False alarm happens. They all go do their thing and walk the smoke compartments, check the smoke boundaries, check ceiling tiles. They're kind of like your eyes on the floor. Now, going through training year after year and then getting down deeper in the weeds with these folks that are returning to renew their fire warden training.
And these wardens can be from any part. They could be clinical people, they could be IT people, they could be all dietary, anything.
That's right. They're all departments. Perfect example was here not too long ago, and I'm trying to get into my minute.
I'm counting.
I had a special care nursery fire warden come to me and say, hey, I need you to walk our areas with me. I think there might be some issues with our evacuation process. I said, okay, went over there, check that out. I was watching, and if you guys know, their beds in the NICU, we were hooked up by oxygen, right, by the wall, not tanks. You're only allowed to have 12 full O2 tanks in a single smoke compartment outside of a hazardous room, yada, 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 unless it's in use on a crash cart. And anyway, I was watching, they could have 50 to 55 babies in a single NICU where we're at, 8,000 square feet, something like that. And they've got 21 to 24 staff members. It takes 3 staff members to move one of those beds and all the equipment at a time. So where we don't have oxygen, right, portable oxygen on these beds, we're having to go back to the state fire marshal's office, and we're having to go to consultants, we're having to go to joint commission them to kind of make sure that we're in compliance with what's in use, right? So I want to put a small O2 cylinder on these beds just for evacuation purposes, not a 23 cubic feet E cylinder, right? Something smaller, just give me 15 minutes to get somewhere and hook back up. Because if these babies don't get oxygen, it's not good.
Yeah.
And it could be really bad. So like that, in my mind, is definitely a compliance in action for the patient.
Yep. Craig, how about you?
He was pushing 3 minutes there, Peter.
Sorry, man. I was kind of hurt.
I didn't say anything, Michael.
I was watching my clock.
Craig, how? That's noted and demerited. Craig, you still there?
Yeah, I am, and I am fixing to leave. I have another engagement.
Yeah.
but,
So if you want to pass your time along to Michael, feel free. I know you got to run.
I will be glad to, but I appreciate being part of this group. Look forward to maybe doing some more. And Peter, thank you very much for inviting me to join.
My pleasure, Craig. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Michael, you've got the time. So Michael, you probably have up to 2 minutes, but you can't go over that if you
I
want.
can use Craig's
time.
minute.
You got a minute to 2.
I think it's those unseen physical environment checks we do that has great benefit to the patient that they don't even know we're doing in the background. We're checking the fire doors. We're looking at the smoke penetrations in our on our walls. We're checking fire extinguishers and exit signs and all these things that keep the building safe for them. So that's just where I always fall back to the safety bit.
Sure.
Is why we're doing what we're doing.
Right. And it's probably another question for another time, but you mentioned at the very beginning of part of compliance is for people to understand that when they go into your environment, it's safe, it's functioning, they're going to be, they're going to be okay. I was going to ask, and how do you ensure that? How do you make that known that this is a safe and welcoming environment? And maybe it's just by staying out of the news and doing everything you've just talked about so that you don't end up in the news.
Yeah, that is always the great fear, is ending up in news, on the 9 o'clock news for something. It's about a great team, being the visible leader of a really good team. And making sure they, like Patrick was saying, ensuring they understand why they're engaged in what they're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. What's the why?
I got a great group here, and they're all very committed.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate your time this morning. Michael Gorham, Director of Facilities Management, Children's Wisconsin in Milwaukee. Patrick Rhinehart, System Director, EOC and Life Safety, Northside Hospital down in Atlanta, Georgia. And Craig, who just took off, Brunswick, Georgia, Director of FM. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. I appreciate your time, and we will certainly be back in touch. Thank you for watching this episode of the Healthcare Facilities Network. Please give this episode a like, as it really does make a difference in helping to promote the discipline of healthcare facilities management.